At 23 years old, I was a bit of a loser. I lived for the weekend, I was living at home with my mum and dad, which isn't a bad thing, but I wasn't overly ambitious. I went to Asia for 6 months and got pissed every single day, and I was hanging out the back of anything I could get my hands on. By 33, somehow, I'm not gonna list my accolades, managed to unscrew up my life and be one of the most successful people to ever do the profession I've done. And in this video, I'm gonna share with you some lessons of wisdom that I've accumulated over the last 10 years. Let's get into it. When it comes to dating apps, unless you're in the top 10% or even the top 5% of men, you're screwed. You won't even get a look in. 90% of women are all fighting over the top 5%. This isn't a pop at women, but they can be quite shallow with some of the things that they want when it comes to men, such as setting a prerequisite for 6 foot, which quite literally means the majority of men will never even get a match. Introducing the Delusion Calculator. So if you live in America, there's something called the female Delusion Calculator. So let's say most women might want someone between 28 and 33, let's say. Exclude married, of course. Race, any race, minimum height, 6 foot. That is a big prerequisite for a lot of women out there. Considering the average height of a man is 5'8", it's pretty crazy. Exclude obese. I don't think there are many women out there that are looking for a man who's obese. And when it comes to minimum income, you only need to spend a couple of hours on TikTok to realize most women in the world expect their man to be earning 6 figures. So if you're looking for someone in that age range that's not married or at least 6 foot tall, you're looking at a percentage of 0.32%. I would say a lot of women, maybe even over half, are all searching for a very, very small amount of men. So if you're on a dating app, you're just not going to be able to capture them this way. For the majority of you watching this, if you're single and you think you're going to find a good quality woman on dating apps, you're wrong. My first bit of advice would be to delete dating apps, not to use them, and instead put yourself into positions where you have to talk to people in public. When I first got to Australia, I deleted dating apps on my phone, and instead I would sometimes put a number on a bit of paper and carry it around on me in my backpack, or even better yet, if I was in a cafe, I would ask them for a bit of pen and paper. I'd write down my number, I'd approach someone and just say, hey, I never usually do this. I don't know if you've got a boyfriend or not. Feel free to never message me, but I couldn't leave this place without giving you my number. If you are doing something at the moment and it is not working, it's time to change it up and try something else. If you can just commit to 3 months of not using dating apps and trying to organically meet people in person, you're gonna have a much better experience of finding someone that's right for you. We all go through life with different things being important to us. These are called values. Sometimes our values won't align with other people's. Other people just quite simply find things important that we don't, and vice versa. Some of you will made it really far through life without really examining what those things are that are important to you. And when you determine what these values are, you must act accordingly. And if someone was to do an audit on your life of what you actually find important and then what you do on a day-to-day basis, we could probably find some discrepancies between your actions and your values. If those don't align, chances are that you might have inherited someone else's values. If you don't think about what you want from life, you just kind of take them on from other people, maybe even your parents. And your parents might be great people, but they lived and grew up in a very different generation to the one you're in. For many of you watching this, your values actually surround maybe adventure, traveling, freedom, but your parents' values might be around security and having a stable upbringing. So for many of you, you might want to travel the world, but at the same time, you're saving money for a mortgage with a woman you're not really in love with that doesn't support your ambitions and values of traveling. And for some reason, you're going to buy a house in a place that you don't want to live with a person you don't love, to a commute to a job that you don't really enjoy. And the reason you might be experiencing despair is because your actions are actually trying to fulfill someone else's values, not your own. And for any of you worrying that you might be too old, here's my favorite quote that I've ever heard from the comedian Burr.
Realize that sleeping on a futon when you're 30 is not the worst thing. You know what's worse? Sleeping in a king bed next to a wife you're not really in love with, but for some reason you got married and you got a couple kids and you got a job you hate. You'll be laying there fantasizing about sleeping on a futon. There's no risk when you go after a dream. There's a tremendous risk to playing it safe.
If you want people to respect you, you're going to need to respect yourself. And training at least 3 times a week is going to be the way you're going to do that. Now, for some of you young guns, or maybe people that don't have access to a coach or a trainer, I'm going to attach a link to this video with a free workout that lasts 4 weeks, and every month, I'm going to rotate it for a brand new split. If you hold up your end of the bargain of trying to make your life better, I'll keep up my end of the bargain and keep rotating the program. People seem to think that gym memberships are expensive, but they're not if you use them. If you take the monthly cost and divide it by going to the gym 3 to 5 times a week, it's not expensive at all. The gym can then become your third place. You have your home, you have your work, and you have the gym. You go there to listen to podcasts, lift weights, relax. How many of you would sit in less traffic if you were to go to the gym for an hour before work? You would only have to get out of bed half an hour earlier, and then you've got your workout in before you even start work for the day. The woman of your dreams that you might not even met yet, She's going to want a guy that takes care of himself. Training's a non-negotiable. Don't care who you are or what you do, you need to be training. Sleep is the foundation for greatness. You cannot build a big or grandiose building without strong foundations. No empire was ever built being sleep deprived. In your older years, you're going to generate these kind of small creatures that ruin sleep over long periods of time, and some people call them kids. Now, I'm not saying that you just disregard your kids or, don't let them interfere with your bedtime, but what I'm saying is you need to respect your sleep cycle. Now, you can't really impact the time you wake up because I'm sure you've got those little annoying things called kids. You've also got things like a job or maybe a dog like mine that bites your toes in the morning to go out for a walk. But one thing we do very much have in our control is what time we go to bed. We do aimlessly scroll through our phones just looking for an excuse not to go to sleep in case we might see a video that might give us a little dash of dopamine before we close our eyes. Set yourself a respectable bedtime and go to bed at that time. Now, the non-negotiables for me are wearing an eye mask. There's a brand called Alaska Bear. They're not expensive, they're on Amazon, they deliver the next day. And now just even the pressure of the eye mask against my eyes lets me know it's time to go to sleep. Nose strips I actually bought for a video so I could debunk them, but I actually sleep with a nose strip the majority of the evenings in the night. Just makes me feel like I'm breathing better. Then the goat of going to bed, because your mind might be racing, you think I'm not ready for sleep, I'm not tired yet. Not to mention the fact you've just been swiping through your phone for a long period of time. Putting a podcast on with a self-timer is probably the best hack to going to bed, because even if I'm not tired at 9 p.m, but I know I need to go to sleep, I say, okay, lay down, close my eyes, put the podcast on for 15 minutes and just see what happens. Worst case scenario, I'm still awake. I just listened to my favorite podcast for a quarter of an hour. I set it to another quarter of an hour and I very, very rarely make it through. Everyone's looking for a supplement, a superpower, ice baths. Little do people know how much impact a small amount of more sleep can have on every aspect of your life, from sex drive, cognition, well-being, mood, composition, the list goes on. You already know this, you just need to do this. When it comes to finances, I'm no expert, but one of my favorite quotes is from Tristan Tate, where he says you should spend half your money like you think you're gonna live another 50 years, and the other half of your money as if you're only gonna live for the next 50 days. When it comes to finances, be sensible and avoid debt. I know for some of you doing this, you work hard and you want recognition from other people about your hard work. I've succumbed to this a lot over the years, and you think that wearing a watch that costs £25,000 will get strangers to be jealous of your success. But at the end of the day, it could be better spent. The most important lesson I can tell you about finances is that wealth is subjective. It depends on the person. There are so many people with more money than you that are depressed about the amount of money they have, and there are so many people with less money than you that are much happier about it than you are. When you look at studies of happiness and wealth, when you get to a certain threshold, which isn't even that much, it's about twice the national average, there is not a linear rise between happiness and wealth. Just because you earn more money doesn't mean you're going to be happier. So it's really important you don't get into a career that you hate with the premise that, oh, in 10 years' time, I'll be earning this amount of money and I'll be this happy because of it. Because what happens if that bet is incorrect? You just wasted 10 years of your life. There are plenty of people that have millions in the bank account that still kill themselves. So don't think it's a prerequisite for the good life. It helps, sure, but it's not everything. When it comes to your situation right now, renting is not wasted money, it is not dead money. Renting is freedom. Renting is being able to pick up and move whenever you want. Renting is not having to worry when there's a water leak in the bathroom. Both owning a property and both renting both have their equal benefits. So don't beat yourself up because you're still renting at 30 or 35. Remember, the real finances here, the real currency we need to be worried about is how happy you are, how much you enjoy your life. Because your property portfolio could be zero, but you're having a good life, versus someone that might own 7 houses but hate their existence. We need to make sure that we are aligned with the values that we spoke about before to have a better understanding of where finances sit within our daily levels of happiness. I spoke about it before. When I first came to Sydney, I couldn't believe there were young, attractive people working in coffee shops. I was like, why is this beautiful 24-year-old working for minimum wage in a coffee shop? Then I realized it was a cafe on Bondi Beach. She got there at 6 a.m. She left at 2:30 in the afternoon. She earned enough to pay her rent and cover her bills, and she probably was sat on the grassy knoll watching the sunset at 5, 6 p.m. with a couple of ciders with her friends. That young person on a minimum wage serving coffees probably had a better life than most humans have ever had in the existence of the human race. Yet if we just looked at her salary, we could point out that maybe she wasn't earning enough. Who's to say? Remember, you are the curator of your life and you get to determine how your life looks. If you compare your bank account to someone else's that's earning more, it's the same as comparing your physique to someone else's that's in better shape. You're just going to make yourself feel worse about it. I used to train this guy called Russell, and he was a self-proclaimed millionaire, and he used to come into the gym and show off about the cars or Oh, I've accidentally worn this watch. Oh, this leather on the strap is the same leather on the inside of my Rolls Royce. Oh, look, James, this watch was engraved by Harrods. I never think he was fully happy, old Russell, because he was always having to try and prove to me how much more money he had than me. And he kept telling me about a friend that he had that lived in a place called Worthing in the UK. And the guy had a smaller house than him, a 10-year-old car, and just lived with his dog. And he couldn't understand why that guy was happier than he was. If you rely on money as the only thing that's going to make you happy, I just don't think it's the best place to spread your bets when you're progressing in life. Be sensible when it comes to money, but it's not the be-all and end-all of life. When it comes to ambition, everyone thinks that ambition is having this massive mountain in front of you that's bigger than everyone else's and that your peak is the highest and you just spend your whole life reaching for the peak. But if I'm honest about ambition, it's about appreciating there never is going to be a peak. Because every time you try and get close to it, you're just going to see another one on the horizon. Ambition is having an understanding of something called the hedonic treadmill, where whatever level you set for yourself, you're going to get used to it eventually. You've already experienced this where you're like, oh, when I get this car, I'm going to be so happy. 3 months after buying the car, you get in it, you shut the door, and you're like, whoa, I used to be really excited by this, and now I feel nothing. I feel numb to it. The same when you bought your first house maybe, or you moved into the new apartment that got you super excited, or when you bought that watch, you've already experienced the hedonic treadmill. Something that you were so excited for, 3 months later, you feel numb to it. You think you're broken, you think you're like, what? Am I messed up? Am I a psychopath? True ambition should be about wanting to do better, to perform better, to think better. Not just for yourself, but for your friends, for your family, for the family you might not even have yet. And one of my key hacks when it comes to ambition would be something that I've coined touching a future. There's gonna come a time where there's something that you want to do and on paper you can't really afford it. Maybe it's flying business class. Maybe it's renting a luxury car for the weekend. Maybe it's going on holiday somewhere or buying a pair of trainers that is out of your reach. But you should do it. And the reason you should do it is because that brief period of time, you can experience what your future might be like. First time I flew first class, I couldn't afford it. But I thought this is a great opportunity to touch a world that I could live in a few years' time if I do the work. When I sat there, I sat on the plane and I looked around and I thought, wow, I felt like I'd won it. I felt like I'd won this in some kind of raffle. I was like, I don't deserve to be here. This is a weird experience. But then as I had my meals and I slept on the plane, as I had a shower and ate the expensive food and got treated like royalty, I thought, whether or not I come back to this area in the plane, whether or not I revisit the part of my future that I've touched, is dependent on what I do tomorrow, when my alarm goes off, when I get offered the opportunity to do something, when I have the choice of playing video games or knuckling down on the project that I should have worked on. The fact that I touched my future motivated me. So the next time you're booking a trip or even a hotel for something you're doing with your missus and you're looking at the hotels you could afford, maybe you book the 5-star hotel. And when you experience how they treat you and the service and how clean your room is and the fact that if you have an afternoon nap, you come back to your room after dinner and they made your bed again, this is all a part of touching your future. If you can implement this right, you get enough tastes of that. You make your future happen because again, you're the driver in control of your life. Everyone seems to think it's external things that are in control of everything. It's not. Now, I'm not saying everyone can be successful enough to fly first class and to stay in 5-star hotels, but your chances of doing so are going to be probably quite a bit higher if you can experience it in the short term. You want to be ambitious, you should definitely touch your future. I know some people are going to go, oh, it's all right for you, it's all right for you. Just over 10 years ago, I was knocking on doors to make a living in Gloucester. I was signing on the dole at the job centre. I used to work in shopping centres, asking people to stop so I could sign them up and get my £7 commission. And for so many people watching this, when it comes to being ambitious, half of you are just going to shut down your own ambitions going, oh, my life's harder than everyone else's, I can't do this. But the other half of you that actually make it happen are going to be the ones that can succeed way beyond what you could ever even imagined. And at the end of the day, ambition shouldn't be derived on whether or not you make £1 million, whether or not you buy a mansion or any of these things. But one day you're going to die, you're going to be laying in your deathbed and you're either going to be proud of all the work you put in or you're not. And ultimately you have the choice to how you're going to feel when that day comes. And that choice is up to you, it's not up to me. And if more people could see ambition like that, it could probably make their life a lot easier. When it comes to diet and supplementation, I'm not going to be here to lecture you about fiber targets that you should have, but what I'm going to say is this. Our body is regenerating on an ongoing process. You can feel it when your nails are growing and your hair's growing. Every single bit of skin that you have now in a few months' time will regenerate into a new piece of skin. We cannot get the nutrients required for those regenerative processes from the air. We need to get them from things that we eat. So when we look at fueling that regenerative process of our skin, our nails, our hair, our bones, our gut, all of these things are going to be formed. We are going to need to give ourselves the adequate nutrition to do so. I'm not asking you to eat like a saint. I'm just saying fruit, vegetables, meats, hitting a proper protein target, staying hydrated. I drink electrolytes because I sweat a lot when I train. I have creatine in this because not only do I want the gains from a sport performance standpoint, I want the cognitive benefits that come from taking creatine. Every one of you watching this should be hydrating, supplementing creatine, and looking into other forms of supplementation. Maybe if you have a deficiency, if you've had blood work done, maybe you're going to be taking things to supplement your testosterone, which we'll get into in a bit. You might be taking tonka ali. And many of you should be trying to lever your ability to find nootropics that help you cognitively. I truly believe that productivity is going to be the new fitness, and your ability to work, to hustle, to get things done, to get ahead of other people. Nootropics are performance enhancers for the mind. They can be the very difference between you doing enough work to just get by or you doing enough work to get ahead. So take your diet seriously, and this is all I ask. Be honest with yourself and ask yourself, how good is your diet out of 10? And if it's a 4, I'm not here to say that's bad. I'm just here saying, what can you do and implement to make that diet a 4, a 5? Then once you identify what that thing is, let's make it a 5. Then we can spend the next period of time, however long it is, making it go from a 5 to a 6. It's not too much to ask. If you think about the amount you want to change your life from where it is to where you want it to go, you're going to have to fuel that process properly. So you might as well start now. So your diet is what you eat. Your tech diet is what you consume. People seem to think that they're not influenced by the world they take in around them digitally, but they are. You need to make sure that you're not absorbing negativity from the internet that's going to make your life worse. Here's one for you. For instance, I live in Australia. Everyone goes, you must be scared of sharks. I have to remind them that when I swim in the sea, I'm way more likely to drown than I am to get bitten by a shark. In fact, hundreds of people drown each year on Bondi Beach, yet my mum's not calling me up going, oh son, please be safe in the water and don't drown. Statistically speaking, sharks are the least of my problems when I put a foot in the ocean. In fact, most British people can name 5 different types of shark, but we can't even spot a rip in the ocean, which is the part that's going to drag us out to our death. But it's because when there's a drowning, the news don't put it in front of people, but when there's a shark attack, they do. Let's look at flying, for instance. We see a lot of people that get nervous on planes, shaking in their seat, hoping that the plane's going to be all right. Statistically speaking, one of the safest methods of travel. Yet my mum, the person who's afraid of flying, is the same person that doesn't put a seatbelt on when I start driving in the car and I get the ding, 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 ding. Mum, come on. Statistically speaking, she's way more likely to die in the car than she is on the plane. Being in a car, traveling the same distance you would fly, is over 10 times more likely to end up in a fatality. Yet again, when there's a car crash and people die, it doesn't make the news, but when a plane goes down, it's everywhere. The information you take in through your technological diet has a massive influence on what you think is actually capable and possible. Still don't believe me? Let's look at the lottery. The chances you win in the lottery are less than you getting struck by lightning. In fact, the chances you win in the lottery are more rare than you getting struck by lightning whilst being eaten by a shark, whilst the plane crashes on top of your head. Yet, why do people believe and still go out and buy the lottery ticket? Because they are programmed to by people taking the lottery winner and putting them on TV. Today, we've got Dave and he won the bingo jackpot lottery of 145 million. How do you feel, Dave? Shut up. Technology and media will convince you the world is a certain way that it wants you to believe it is. Algorithms will serve you content that they believe you will watch. Platforms want to keep you on it. They don't want to keep you happy. So if you're absorbing negativity, it will make you negative. If you're absorbing pessimism, it will make you pessimistic. You must not just control the diet of the food you put in your mouth, but you must control the technology that you put into your brain. We've known for years that you are what you eat. I'm here to tell you you're also what you absorb online. Testosterone is a hormone that we produce. Men produce more of it than women, and after the age of 30, it's going to decline about 1% a year if you're lucky. Now, testosterone is a big player in sex drive, muscle mass, composition. It's a very complex hormone, but it's fleeting if you do not support an environment congruent to it being able to be produced. In layman's terms, you must protect your testosterone production. Men with low testosterone often have low libido, low mood. It can be a big causator in mental health disorders. And there are even going to be some men that have something called hypogonadism, which is where their testicles just don't work in the way they should to produce adequate testosterone. Those men can medically go on testosterone therapy known as TRT. Now, TRT is very fashionable because suddenly dudes who are 45 and really into fitness can manipulate their testosterone levels to be of the same of a 21-year-old with extreme levels of test. This is people kind of manipulating the system a little bit, but ultimately, what 45-year-old doesn't want to have the testosterone? of someone a lot younger. There are considerations to make. The supplementation like tonka ali, getting more sleep, getting sunlight, vitamin D, fish oils, all of these things that are very important for production of testosterone, this helps us produce test endogenously. It allows our body to produce more of it. However, when we look at things like TRT and anabolic steroids, you're having this exogenously, which is taking it from the outside and bringing it in, whether it's through pills or injections or cream, whatever it is. When we take on testosterone exogenously, our body's production will halt, it will stop. This is why people do cycles in smaller periods, so they can kickstart their system afterwards. If you were going to consider going on testosterone replacement therapy, you will probably be on it for a very long period of time. You probably will be injecting or taking the pills or putting the cream on for the rest of your life. When it comes to anabolic steroids and this debate of exogenously taking testosterone, whether in smaller amounts or larger amounts, we must think about the ethical situation of performance enhancing. The analogy that I use with a lot of my clients is I say to them, look, I've got a Golf R. If I tune that engine, I'll get better performance out of it, similar to taking anabolic steroids. But we must be mindful that there is a reason that the manufacturers made the car in a certain way. And if we wish to get more horsepower, more torque, more performance out of it, we must take on the fact that we are going to put it at risk of potentially not being able to handle that performance, which is where we can see ill adverse effects from testosterone use and testosterone abuse. However, I think it's imperative that everyone watching this takes it upon themselves to protect their production of testosterone and try and optimize it the best they can. Increase sleep, reduce alcohol, lift weights, eat a good diet, get sunlight. And if you're not sure about the levels of testosterone you're producing, get blood work done. Make sure you do it fasted on an empty stomach at the same time, and do it several times over the period of a few months so you can determine where your baseline of testosterone is. It's more important than anyone's giving it credit for. I know there's a lot of wankers out there on the internet. They're like, oh, you should read, CEOs read 1 book a week. They don't. And then there's other people like Chris Williamson that shares a reading list of 100 books. And you're like, mate, I don't need a list of 100 books. I haven't even read one. Suddenly, when you see a list of 100 books, it makes you want to read none. But what we need to appreciate is when someone writes a book, they are sharing a lifetime of wisdom within a few hundred pages, often an audiobook that's 6 hours long. So in 6 hours, you can access more than a year's work from someone. If you were to think about how much it would cost to hire me, let's say, it'd be very expensive. By the hour, even more. So when I wrote any of my last books, when you think about the amount of hours of work I put into it and the fact you get it for £4.50 in a hard copy from Amazon, or you can get the audiobook for free on Spotify. Audiobooks are now free on Spotify as part of what you're already paying to listen to Joe Rogan or listen to your favorite playlist. You get to access huge amounts of people's work boiled down into one succinct, editorial overlooked piece of work. Yet we overlook it and we don't appreciate the value in that. You can become an expert in any field within a matter of days or weeks by absorbing the information from the most knowledgeable people. You've then got, say you got 100 people that have written a topic about one subject. You can see the reviews of which book did the best and resonated best with the audience. You've got not only the person at the top to write about the subject for years on end to put it into a book, you've then got thousands of people that have read the book for you to then review you and tell you how good it was so you can decide which book you read. Yet you don't. Do you understand how insane that is? I get retainers well over 6 figures to write a book on a subject, sometimes subjects I don't know that much about, like my last book, How to Be Confident. Do you know what I did? I read the 5 top books on confidence. I agreed with some things, I disagreed with others. I then emulated it and succinctly put it into one book. I read 5 books so you didn't have to, so you needed to read one and walk away more knowledgeable than most people that you could ever meet at a pub quiz. I love Joe Rogan, I do. His podcasts are 3 hours long. But you need to consider if there's a subject that you want to become more well-versed in, are you better off listening to 2 Joe Rogan podcasts or 1 complete book on a subject? Not to mention the fact that you can listen to the audiobooks at 1.2 or 1.3 times the speed. You can shave nearly an hour off the podcast and absorb it in a faster way where you don't feel like you're getting bored. You can never underestimate the impact of a good book. I had a £1 million idea, quite literally multi-million pound idea from a £7 book. Even if you were just to commit to every time you were in your car on your own driving somewhere that you listened to an audiobook, your self-development could skyrocket. And that one idea, that one concept, that one thing that you thought you were going to do, that book in one little sentence might give you just the inkling of information you needed to make change. I was sat at home, August 2016, in my parents' garden, listening to an audiobook of the 4-hour work week, and I couldn't understand why I was feeling the way I was feeling in life. And there was one sentence by Tim Ferriss that changed my life forever. The opposite of happiness is boredom. Within 3 weeks, I was on a plane one way to Australia. It was the best single decision of my life. Without that book, I would not be here recording this video for you. Think about that. All truly great ideas are thought of while walking. Do you know who said that? Friedrich Nietzsche. So whenever you need to think about something or even cool down, hey, go walk it off. Walking is a great tool. I think it's great for clarity, for ideas, for thinking about things. It's a nice distraction. I think walking is massively overlooked. I think that people should have more work meetings out on a walk rather than sitting in an office like, hey, you want to sit down and discuss what we're going to do for the week? Why don't we do it whilst walking? Walking to me is just a great thing that people should be doing more of. I know a lot of you during lockdown got sick of the fact that you were walking everywhere with dates because places were closed. But I still think this is an incredible tool that you could utilize. You see, walking allows us to do something that makes us feel very natural. So when we share that experience with someone else, it's a bit like being in the car with someone. You're doing something on autopilot that allows you to have a nice flow to conversation. Nothing is more awkward than sitting in a bar in an interview style-esque, sitting opposite each other. That's another thing. If you're gonna go on a date with people, sit next to them, not opposite them, unless you are trying to interview them. Walking is something that you should be doing not just for exercise, not just for your body, but for your mind. And it can sound super creepy, but if you're gonna meet someone on a date, rather than getting pissed with them, especially when you don't think they're that hot, but you do 4 pints and end up banging them anyway, say, let's meet for a date. It's less time of yours, less time of mine. We don't have to commit to going to a busy bar in the evening. Let's just get a coffee, walk around the block. I'll walk you to the tube station after work so we can get to feel each other out. You ever notice that dogs just need to sniff each other's bums to see whether or not they're interested? And I think we could learn a lot from dogs when it comes to that. So maybe next time you're penciling in a date, but you've got a busy diary, so is she, by the way, just say, hey, look, we both work in the same part of the city. Why don't I walk you to a train station? We can meet each other for 10 minutes, but don't mention sniffing each other's bums, because I've said that before to girls. And they never really like it. I could talk about jiu-jitsu all day, every day, but at the end of the day, we could say it's about putting yourself outside your comfort zone, or we could say it's about making new friends, or really the reality is, with jiu-jitsu, you can make yourself a flipping weapon. You can massively improve your competency when it comes to combative situations. I saw a study recently about women and attraction to men, and apparently, the man's ability to fight was a bigger predictor of the sexual attractiveness than almost anything else. So maybe getting a couple of scars on your eyebrows and a little cauliflower ear could be exactly what you need. And I'm not saying that you ever need to acquire this skill so you can fight people in public, but we know it's better to be a warrior in a garden than it is to be a gardener in a war. And Jordan Peterson famously said that you should be a monster, an absolute monster, and then you should learn how to control it. Yeah, sure, lifting weights and doing all that is really fun, but so is fucking up people that are twice your size. I could be wrong about jiu-jitsu, it could be the worst experience of your life. But I'm here in this video saying stop being a pussy and give it a go. If you go to jiu-jitsu, you actually try it out for a session or two, then you can use the comments and say that I was wrong. But until then, I'm right until proven wrong. So how about you go inquire in your local gym and give it a go? You pussy. I'm joking. Chances are you're going to go bald, or at least you're going to experience hair loss, quite a bit of hair loss, a receding hairline for sure. How do I know that? Because the majority of men do. It's a part of life. If you go to somewhere in Eastern Europe, you look around, literally 75% or more men are bald. But for some reason, social media has led us to believe that we shouldn't be experiencing hair loss. Most of the celebrities that we follow, from Jordan Peterson, David Beckham, or any Hollywood actor, has had a hair transplant. So we suddenly look at hairlines around and go, oh, what's happening to me shouldn't be happening. Now, you can do your best like I do. Sometimes I push the hair across because you can use the hair here to cover this bit, or what barbers do is they grow you a bit of hair here to cover that bit. But ultimately, it's just something that's going to happen. You can book a flight to Turkey and go get a hair transplant where they take the follicles from the back and put it to the front. But you'll notice that they only replace it to a certain line, not further back. And the reason they do that is because after the surgery, they're going to put you on finasteride and minoxidil, which are two different compounds that are going to prevent any more hair loss from occurring. Now, not everyone, but I believe a fairly significant chunk of people will get side effects from these drugs, whether it is low libido, erectile dysfunction, or just causing any type of disruption to the endocrine system, including testosterone and other factors. So you need to make an informed decision on that, but personally, when I looked down the route of what things were available for me to potentially get thicker hair, get my hair back or whatever, I decided I'd rather go bald gracefully. Keep in mind that the majority of things we're trying to do with our appearance is impress other men, not women. The reason we want big pecs is to impress other men, not women. The reason we want the latest rose gold Daytona is to impress other men, not women. Daytona comes up a little bit small on the wrist, that's why I've got an AP. But the reason so many things we're doing with our aesthetics are actually to impress other dudes. the majority of women couldn't give a shit about your hairline. When looking at other things that you can work on, everything was spoken in this video: health, diet, financial situation, ambition. All of these things are going to put you in much better stead with women than having a solid flipping hairline that goes across the front of your head. I'm not saying it's nothing to worry about. For some of you, the idea of being a skinhead might cripple you and fill you with anxiety, but just to remind you, there are a lot of hyper-successful men: The Rock, Jason Statham, Bruce Willis, Joe Rogan. Chances are, if you shaved your head, people will remember you as having a shaved head. It will take a few months, similar to the hedonic treadmill. You shave it, everyone's like, oh my God, I shaved it. Within 3 months, you go, I can't remember what you look like wearing hair. Wearing hair? Can't remember what you look like with hair. It's just the reality. Same as buying a new car. Within 3 months, you'll be bored of it. Same as shaving your head. Within 3 months, no one will remember what you looked like before. You can wear hats as often as you like. You don't need hair products. You don't need to wash your hair. Some women find it really sexy to date a guy who's a skinhead. I would 100% recommend dudes shaving their head. Then if you hate it and you do want to have a hair transplant and take them an Minoxidil and finasteride, by all means do it, because guess what they need to do just before you have the procedure? They shave your head. Balding, embrace it. Happens to the majority of men. So what? Imagine you sit down with a woman who loves you for who you are, but then her one thing was, oh, if you start losing your hair, I'm not going to love you. She's the type of person you want to flip and get out of your life. And what? When it comes to porn, you need to be careful, because you in 1 hour on Pornhub can access more vaginas than hundreds of years of lineage of all your ancestors that came before you. And that must have some kind of impact on the brain. Now, I'm not here telling you to never have a wank or to never watch porn, just to think that there will be repercussions of you doing so. The issue with being a man is how easy it is to bypass so many things that make it important to be a man, and coming with that are so many things that drive you to be a man. A man has sexual desires, which he can self-medicate by wanking to porn. A man has desires to be held in regard and to have status and to get recognition, which he can get from video games. One of the only things left to be a man is to have a full belly, and suddenly you're sitting at home wanking, playing video games and eating takeaway pizzas, and you're trying to bypass the system to find happiness as a human being, yet you're not doing it quite right. My advice, especially if you're in a single man, is to stop watching porn, to maybe dial back on the wanking, because you're going to need a bit of fire in the belly when you approach a woman in public to very politely ask her for a number. Because remember, people don't mind being sold to. It's the means and manners in which they're sold to which is the best. Remember, let's say you stop from wanking, you get a bit horny and you think, Jesus, I really need to sort my life out when it comes to dating. Suddenly you're in a Starbucks, you're getting a coffee, you go approach a woman and you say, hey, look, really sorry, here's my number. Saw you from afar, I think you're beautiful. I'd love the opportunity to take you out for a drink or maybe go for a walking date with a coffee. You have the opportunity to give a woman a compliment she might not have had in months or years. You have quite literally the ability to make someone's day, even if they decline your date. But if you're having a wank every morning to Pornhub and you're medicating that part of your body that wants sexual desires, you are not going to feel inclined to do anything outside your comfort zone when it comes to being proactive to get closer to going on dates with people that you could actually have a long and fulfilling relationship with. So there are many dangers to masturbation and to porn, and they could have long-serving issues to your psychology. And again, if you're someone that wanks infrequently, maybe just wank less to this crazy porn. Because again, like we spoke about in the tech diet, what kind of information, whether it's news, media, social media, or hardcore porn, is influencing your state of the world? And that can't be taken lightly. I'm not saying never wank to porn again, but I'm saying if you did, your life would probably be considerably better. And you might be thinking, what's the problem with having dudes that sit at home that wank and play video games and eat pizzas? Well, those people become losers. And losers are a bad thing, not just for society and not for the losers in general, but for the fact, let's say there are 100 losers in your neighborhood. We know, statistically speaking, that 1 in 100 people is probably a psychopath. So the more losers that we have in the world that are disconnected from society, that are living in their own little worlds of video games, masturbation, and junk food, that have no connections to real people, those people start getting disgruntled with the rest of the world, and people being happy and families going on little trips and people being on happy dates. And they're the type of people that end up taking an assault rifle to their school. So the better that you can understand the fact that these integral and important parts of your human psychology need to be fed and not bypassed with proper things like striving for a family life, a serving relationship, and a job that brings you personal pleasure and fulfills your values as a human being, the better you can get on with it. When it comes to playing video games, some people say you should, you shouldn't. How about this? This is your golden rule. If you want to play Call of Duty, you want to play Fortnite, or you even want to play World of Warcraft, here's the rule. You cannot play video games until you've made the day your bitch. If you've made the day your bitch and you've conquered everything, you get home, you want to have a few games, then by all means do it. But if you're going to wake up without doing the things you need to do on a daily basis, start playing video games, that puts you in a close vicinity of being a loser. So don't do that. And the last lesson we're going to talk about is mental health. And I know that a lot of people on social media over the last few years has used this as an opportunity to see who's got the worst mental health. Oh, but you've never tried killing yourself, so what do you know to lecture me about mental health? This isn't a competition or a cock-off to see who's been more depressed. I'm here to remind you, I see mental health being like a table that has many legs that need to be propped up by many of the things we spoke about before. Values, stress, diet, relationships, sleep. There are so many, and you might be able to kick one leg out and the table's fine, but if you kick enough of them out, it's going to topple over and it's going to fall to the floor and crash down around you. There are two components when it comes to mental health that I think are vitally important. You have happiness and you have pleasure. And the quicker that you can understand that drugs are in pleasure, booze is in pleasure, wanks is in pleasure, happiness is enjoying your work, it's having a dog, it's being in a serving relationship as it's raining on a Saturday night and sitting at home and watching a Netflix series with your missus. The problem is, if you do not distinguish the two of these and you feel like you have a low in your life, you might turn to pleasure and you might turn to boozing, doing drugs, going out. But really what you're trying to do is fill your quota of happiness. Now, if you do not appreciate or have a good understanding of what makes you happy in life, and you start trying to fill that quota with this, you will end up with despair. And we've all seen the people that constantly party and their mental health just gets worse and worse and worse. The most important lesson that you'll need to learn from this is, you can live a life with happiness without pleasure. Remember the girls that worked in the coffee shop that went to work at 6 a.m. and finished at 2 p.m.? They didn't have a lot of money. They didn't have Gucci handbags. They didn't have expensive things. But what they did have was purpose, meaning, job, getting up in the morning, probably watching the sunset go down with their friends, having a cider in the evening. What they didn't have was pleasure. But if you neglect happiness, if you neglect relationships, neglect the importance of what you absorb in a diet, if you neglect all the things we spoke about today, you cannot live a life of pleasure without happiness. And that's why some people on a mediocre income, in a strong family house with kids, are happier than people that have got all the money in the world. If you can go through life abiding to the lessons that I taught you before and distinguishing between happiness and pleasure, and appreciating that mental health is fleeting, it's like fitness. You have to work to get fit, then you have to continue doing the work to remain fit. And all it takes is one slip up and a few months out of it for your health markers to take a dip when it comes to physical health, and the same will go when it comes to mental health. If you take a pay cut at your current job to go after a job that you actually are going to enjoy, that means less pleasure for more happiness. That's a good deal. If you decide to stop drinking and doing drugs and snorting coke at the weekend, that's less pleasure for more happiness. That's a good deal. Well, whenever there's an option in life to give up happiness for pleasure, whether it's doing a job that's more stressful for more money, bad deal. Whatever decision you make in life from this point on, ask yourself, are you giving up happiness for pleasure or pleasure for happiness? And they're the best lessons that I can give you from my last 10 years on this planet. If you apply them right, I think you can do better. That's all I'm asking you to do. Do better. Thanks for watching.